Hello, everybody, and welcome to SOS webinar. We have today the pleasure to be with Raymond. He is the co-CEO and founder of CRIO. I know most of you already know CRIO. So we're going to be talking about CRIO today, about the new updates and more information about it. So here we are.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Do you want to?
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think some of us are familiar with CRIO, but definitely like to have you give a little background on yourself, who CRIO, what exactly is it for the rest that will
Yeah.
be watching.
Yeah. So I used to be a clinical research site owner. In that role, I was doing everything from business development, coordinator work as needed, EDC entry, financial data collection. So I completely understand all the workflows from a research site perspective. And this was back in 2013, 14, 15. And then I realized there's no good software. I didn't think there was a very good software out there for research sites. And in particular, I just couldn't deal with all the paper that was being used to collect data. And I'd seen like how healthcare and other industries have gone electronic. So in 2015, I approached my then co-founder and technical counterpart, who was a guy I worked with that was a good programmer, and I said, "Hey, I've got a business idea." I showed him some source worksheets. Said, "Can you make this electronic?" And he said, "Yeah, it's easy." So I told him, that there's an opportunity here. So we decided to launch the business. We launched it in 2015. Was able to raise some money from friends and family, and got a couple of institutional investors, and then built out eSource in September of 2016. My site went live, and then we showcased it at a major industry conference. It was the SERS in 2016. Had a lot of buzz, got some positive feedback, and then from there we just started building out the rest of our platform. Today we have several thousand sites using our system. We've got a lot of site networks. I did think early on when I started seeing a lot of private equity enter the market, and I'd say 18, 19, I was like, I think this is for real this time. I think the fundamental dynamics lend themselves to a network approach. So we wanted to make sure that our system could work for all sites, from small all the way to the very large. So it makes you think about the product a little differently, but we put a lot of our investment back into the product. We've always been product led. Much more of our, I think, just look at the percentage of our revenue going to R&D. It's going to be higher than a lot of other companies at our size. And so we've always sort of led with innovation, led with the user, put a lot of emphasis on doing user research to make the software as intuitive as possible. If it should work right out of the box, right? Like people should be able to use software without reading an instruction manual. And if they can start using it, and then the organization will get value out of it. So we put a lot of effort into that. And now we're at the point now, I think sponsors are figuring out, hey, when sites use eSource, my data is cleaner. I can remote monitor. There's a lot of benefits to this. So we're starting to get interest from sponsors as well.
Wow, congratulations, Raymond. And I actually was very curious about how did you started, and now I'm more surprised learning that you started as a site owner. So it's a pleasant surprise. That's amazing. And so when you started this, there were not many or options for the electronics. So it's so great to hear that you got that idea obviously through your business that you were running back then.
I'm curious.
eSource really took a lot of education to get normalized. This is definitely a novel concept. It took a lot of evangelizing.
When you began, who were your primary competitors at that time? Were there any?
There was nobody really that had gained any type of traction. There were some sites that developed their own proprietary systems internally, but no vendor had really made any type of foothold among sites at a broad scale for eSource. So we really didn't have much competition in the early years. Now there's competitors, there's alternatives, and that's fine. That's the way the market is.
Certainly.
So but it took a lot of evangelizing. I mean, it's a very conservative industry, as you know. I mean, I think a big part of it was because, you know, I was cold calling owners at the very beginning. My first year, I was just on the phone all the time. And the fact I was an owner myself, I think made a huge difference, because I could say, no, like, this is eSource. No, I'm not trying to sell you an EDC. I know the difference. And also, I think over the years, I've seen more awareness from sponsors. You know, back then, I think all the sponsors, for some reason, thought sites were using the EHR for source data collection. Many still do. And that's true on the academic medical center side. But I mean, I don't know of a single private site or small physician practice that uses the EMR for interventional study data. I mean, they just don't.
No.
So, but I think a lot of sponsors are aware that there is this thing called eSource now.
And
I was going to ask you, you mentioned, I mean, do you think even now is eSource normalized? I mean, I'm honestly sort of like surprised to hear some bigger site networks or bigger sites that still use paper, like more so than I would have expected. Because you think, oh, these big sites, they must be using eSource, but yeah, shocked to hear they aren't. So do you think there's still, you know, some room to run here, or we're still in the process of normalizing it?
Yeah. I'm not even sure we're at 50%. I think we're less. I still using eSource. Like, if you just look at private sites, I think you just look at I mean, you exclude academic medical centers and oncology centers, which sort of have to do in the EMR. I mean, I think most of the researchers are still doing it on paper, which is just shocking to me that electronics is not self-evidently better. I mean,
And that's simply a testament to, as you said, this industry is very conservative. I remember at our junior conference, which Monica was kind enough to help with, you were one of the sponsors of that conference in 2019. Is that right, Monica? Yeah. 2019? Yeah, and Raymond was there. So you two have met.
Yes. You mentioned it. Yeah, I mean, I knew him. I felt I knew him, but I wasn't sure if it was face-to-face or CRIO, because we started using CRIO a long time ago with Chris and Nan. So that was my first experience with any electronic service, was CRIO.
Yep, using it to this day. So yeah, I mean, it's absolutely a testament to very conservative, and eventually it'll be 100%, as it'll be required by sponsors to utilize eSource and CROs. But that time still ways off, I believe.
Yeah.
Are you seeing it in feasibility questionnaires, at least? The question being asked, do you use paper or electronic?
It's in every feasibility question I think I've completed for sure in the past year. And then they want to know what system, and they ask a bunch of other questions.
That's good. I mean, but there's no explicit judgment around the answers, right?
No.
I mean, I've seen.
Is good, right? I mean,
I think so. Well, so far this is mostly like a site decision, right? To implement still. I have worked with a few sponsors, very few, who actually implemented their own system, which is something separate of any of these that I think we're familiar with. But I think we're still a long ways away, like Chris mentioned.
Yeah. Still a lot of opportunities out there.
Well, your site was operational, Raymond, when they were still using paper ECRFs, right, for EDC?
I think
there was no EDC.
In 2012 is when I joined the industry, so I think it was mostly EDC by that point. I've heard the stories about the triplicate paper, but I've never seen that. Yeah,
the transition started occurring in the late 90s, but I mean, it wasn't truly fully implemented probably until 2008.
Yeah, even that is kind of mind-boggling. That would take 10 years. You know, I was still hearing stories about triplicate paper ECRFs.
I've been in the research for 20 years, and that's how I started with triplicate ECRFs, and then you also had to fax them. So I remember having to fax them to whatever number, and then slowly it changed over time. Yeah.
So be optimistic, Raymond. Things move very slowly. You'll get there.
Yes.
The feasibility questionnaire still asks for a fax number.
They do sometimes. Yes.
Yes, they do. They do. In fact, recently, one of the students asked me, "Are you really? We're still really using fax?"
Yeah.
I'm just like, well, in the case of of the medical records,
Mhm.
that's the best way to get it, because the majority of doctors will not send it via email, obviously,
Right.
for HIPAA
Right.
reasons.
Mhm.
So that's mainly, for me, that's mainly the main reason why we have fax
Mhm.
still for medical records, basically.
Pretty much.
Well, and maybe
Yeah.
just an interesting segue here about Raymond. Getting medical records can be a problem for sites. I know CRIO's got a nice little implementation to pull medical records. Is that something you want to tell us a bit about? I thought that was
Yeah.
like an amazing feature that you guys have.
Absolutely. I don't know if you've had a chance to use it or see it live, but
No, I've not
it's
seen it live, but yeah,
it's
I love the concept.
yeah, it's in partnership with another with a healthcare, like a virtual healthcare provider that we partnered with, and what it does is basically with I mean, you have the information required to identify a patient, and so you'd have to get the patient's consent, right, to do anything like this. So you basically register. What you're doing is you're registering the patient with this health service. The health service will provide the patient with what is called patient insights, along with a copy of their comprehensive record. So one thing that's interesting about the service is that it grabs all of the patient's medical records across all the healthcare institutions that are participating in exchanges, which is the vast majority of the big networks. And they'll search within the address and geography. So you don't have to worry about, oh, do they get the right URL? Do they get all the providers? Because it's very confusing for a lot of patients. It's confusing to me. I forget like who my doctor is associated with, like which institution. So it does all that legwork and then takes all those records and aggregates them and then synthesizes them and then removes some of the duplicates. It's a very comprehensive record. It's now actually very accurate and up to date. And then they layer in some health insights around preventive care recommendations for the patient. So it's very good for supporting the care journey for the patient. And then what you're doing by virtue of signing up the patient for this service is that you get the benefit of receiving those medical records. So the whole thing will take, I don't know, 15 minutes. And so that, instead of 3-4 weeks, especially if you have multiple requests, right? The fact that it's all aggregated. And this is the first part of our journey in EMR. I mean, we are launching an effort right now to really understand how we can better integrate with the HR systems. We want to ultimately be at the point where we can pull in all the medical records digitally from any EHR that supports FHIR, which is vast majority of the systems in the US. And then we want to empower the site teams to be able to search digitally, incorporate some AI tools to facilitate that search, and then pull in the records, and then basically link it to eSource. So you can see how even if you're not an oncology center, you still are referencing the medical record for eligibility, for medical history, for medications, and so the ability. I think what's missing is the ability to basically get a hold of those medical records and work with them digitally. And then what I think is going to be really interesting is if we can allow the sites to annotate them, right? Because the medical records never are accurate and up to date. So the site's job is to basically curate them and reconcile them, right? So the best way to do it now, unfortunately, is pen and paper, right? Like cross things out or circle things. So what if we could create that experience digitally and allow the sites to do that electronically? So now everything's traceable. So that's our grand vision, and we're just starting that journey right now. But I think there'll be a time when I think getting medical records will be really easy. That's what I hope.
That'd be awesome.
That sounds fantastic, Raymond. You're going a mile ahead because there is not, up to this point, I don't think, in the not just in the industry, in our industry, but in the healthcare industry as a whole, there is no other way to send medical records that is HIPAA right, compliant, exactly. Which is just either there or some organizations have the with encrypted, but it's oftentimes it's complicated.
Yeah, exactly. With FHIR, though, there's now at least a standard that everyone can use. So I think the hard part has always been getting the medical records electronically. That's now the easy part. Now I think what we can bring to the table is how do we empower the teams to utilize them in a way that's natural, that replicates what the workflow for the site is. And the whole HRDC integration, I'm extremely skeptical. I mean, there's a whole category of, I guess you could say, quasi-competitors, CRIO, that are doing that, but like very little data in the study data maps one-to-one to the HR. I mean, study data is an interpretive layer. It's a curated layer on top of the EMR. So, the reason you hire a research site is to interpret the data, right? Like, a lot of times the sponsor wants to know, like, how do you categorize a patient's medical journey, right? And so they have these specific questions and single choice questions, but that's only meaningful in the context of that study. That's not how doctors organically collect the data, right? So what we need is to basically allow study teams to reconcile, right, to draw that linkage. And I think that's why I'm really puzzled by all these EHR and ADC integrations, because they just assume that somehow you can just find the right data point and populate it. I mean, at most you're talking like 10% of the data on a study trial has a one-to-one analog. I mean, it's blood pressure and vitals and a few other things in labs. I mean, there's not a lot, right?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I've talked to several companies who are doing that, and when I'm like, this does not interest me for a number of reasons, they seem to get very offended. And again, maybe for working in oncology and academic center, maybe it makes sense, but especially private sites, and a lot of us are working with multiple EHR vendors across multiple. I mean, it just doesn't hold up. And again, I'm not putting any data into these EHRs, so it has very, very limited use in my mind.
Right.
Raymond, we have a question from the audience. It's so this is transcredit. Okay, I am sorry if this has already been asked by someone, but does CRIO support integration with any financial software?
Not currently. I know that's a lot of our clients have asked for that, so we're looking into it right now about how we would structure that integration. And I think we have some pretty good ideas at this point, but I can't make any commitments about when that would happen. Yeah. It's definitely high on our list of things that we want to accomplish.
Yeah, they are mentioning my SMO uses QuickBooks Online for bookkeeping and can't seem to find a good workflow.
Yeah, I mean, with our system, you can always download things in Excel, and I think some of these accounting systems are set up so you can ingest them. So I know some clients will just download and upload. We also have the ability to expose the client's data for direct. So like all of our site data, all of our clients' data is the digital data is mineable. So I mean, with the right, you have to have some technical savvy. So if you have some type of in-house or outsourced engineering capability, you can grab whatever data you want out of the CRIO system and do whatever you want with it, including sending it to other systems. That is possible.
Let's go back. I have a question about, or I guess a point maybe, about eSource, because eSource, like you said, it's out there. Other vendors are doing it. It's a pain in the ass to build. It can be in many instances. I know that yet another nice feature CRIO offers is a bit of a marketplace for sort of pre-built, maybe it's the best way to say it, eSource. I guess, can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think, again, that's sort of the pain point for a lot of sites, and even somebody in the comments talking about they're an eSource designer. So what can you say about your eSource?
Yeah, so the way to do this is it's definitely invest in the right design up front, and it's going to save you time in the long run is the philosophy. So we do have a library of all these procedures. Every client gets a global library. I think it's over 100 procedures right off the bat that are pre-built, and then you can custom build on top of it. And then there's the ability to copy templates as needed. So you can even create a study template as a shell for common indication, build from there. So there are some ways to expedite it, but we understand completely that sites get busy. So we do have a study design service. Our service is actual people, usually ex-coordinators, people that understand the industry, who will take a protocol and ECRF guidelines and anything else you give them. And I think we even have it there's a preference sheet, because we know that some sites like to do this type of design, some like it this way. So we've identified them, and we actually give a cheat sheet like, do you want A or B? And then you can just order. You can request it. There is some turnaround time. It's not automatic. It is a human being. They don't have any special powers, right? But we've got a team, and we have a QA process, and we pride ourselves in the quality of that design. So we will deliver that as a great way for sites to have study design, capacity on the side as needed. To keep the prices low, we do retain the right that if we are designing a study, we have the right to resell it. So anybody that's initiated a request, we can put in the marketplace. And the pricing's the same, so there's no advantage. Like, you're not subsidizing, you're the first to buy it. But what it does is it means that when we get asked to design a study, because we have so many clients, we know we're going to have some level of resales that allows us to really keep the price down. We do not make a profit on this service. It's really designed to give sites the optionality so that they can be successful with CRIO.
Yeah, and I love that. I think, we've outsourced it to people before as we've done it in-house, but sometimes you might be waiting weeks to get this stuff built and get all the bugs or sort of little issues tweaked out. But, knowing that it's, working in a CTMS where there's a ton of sites doing the same study, it's been built, it's probably been vetted to at least some degree. You're starting out good. And we all know you can sort of live or die by how good or bad your e-source is, right? Like, bad e-source can really put you in a hole. So being able to start strong from the beginning is a huge advantage. And again, just something I like that I haven't seen anywhere else.
Yeah, and we have what's called, for the marketplace, we have what we call like the standard template, which is like CRIO spec. But then some sites want to configure on top of that. So we offer configuration services. So we can do full service or kind of that base level service. So we really try to meet the clients where they're at.
Very nice. I think one of the next hurdles is full integration with EDC or designing your own product. And I think CRIO's got something going on there as well.
We do, but I think we are, yes, so we do. And we are actually working on an EDC integration right now. So we have the ability to offer, for the larger pharmas that have long-term commitments to an EDC vendor, one of the things that we could offer that sponsor is basically a centralized e-source concept where they can essentially license CRIO from us, e-source, and the benefit of that is they can build the e-source template, or we build the e-source template to their satisfaction. And when we do that, we can pre-map to the eCRF. So we build the source in parallel with the eCRF, and then we make sure that we have at least the critical variables of the eCRF covered. And we build that integration right into the template, and then the template we distribute to the sites on the study. Sites can build on top of it. A lot of sites have SOPs that are specific to that. So when they receive a centralized template, they can build on top of it. And then we're building out an EDC integration right now that we can reuse in other studies that will allow the sites to send the data directly into the EDC at the push of a button. It will be a data entry person still needs to be on the delegation log. Just so you know, most EDC systems don't have integrations on their queries. So just answering queries, you have to have a person there anyway. Mm-hmm. But it's better and safer to have a person in the middle, because if something doesn't happen or we can't do a one-to-one mapping, because there's always going to be some edge cases. But you know what? 90% automation is better than 0.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. That was one of my biggest complaints about the entire industry, is that these systems are not integrated. Now, eSource is newer, yes, and as we know, conservative, as we discussed initially, but there will be a time when it's required.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's cheaper to the sponsors if they're integrated, right?
Oh, absolutely. And yeah. And Sarah in the comments makes a good point about proper ownership data. So the site owns their data. This is an important part. Like our system is site facing. So let's just say you're a CRIO client and the sponsor decides that they like this model, then you inherit the sponsor's template in your CRIO org. It's the same login. It coexists with all. So as a coordinator, you wouldn't even know the difference. All you know is that it's the same. It looks and feels exactly the same way. So sites that use our system don't have any behavior change. If it's a site that's not a CRIO client, we'll set them up with a CRIO account, and then they can inherit the template. And you know what? If they like the experience and they want to be directly licensed CRIO to deploy in their other studies, they can, and they get to keep that account. So it has nothing to do with whether the sponsor's on the study. This is very different than other vendors that sell to either sites or to sponsors. We're trying to bridge it so that the sites can license directly from us, and it's their data. They control the data. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I think is really important about eSource, and I can't emphasize enough, is that the reason why it's been difficult for a lot of people to understand this, because if you're not a coordinator, you don't really understand, but source data collection for the site is somewhat of a collaborative process, right? I mean, like, how many times do you want to have a conversation between the coordinator and the investigator about how to interpret something, or you need the PI's eyes on this, or the PI's assess like clinical significance, something like that, right? So in our system, we have the concept of a draft, right? So certain data can be in draft stage, as you can have a draft progress note. You can leave comments to each other, and the sponsor series don't see that. It's a private workflow. So in our system, when you're done and you're ready to publish the data, then you hit the save button, then you push it in, right? And so we have this private workspace, but you have control over when it gets formally entered into the study, and then the audit trail turns on.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
You have fans on the talking
comment
to
section.
you. Sarah, say hi, and then Stephanie is answering questions for people that is asking things on the thread. So
So you guys,
Raymond, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to ask, what was the latest addition to the platform that you would like people to know about?
There's so many good ones.
I got a couple of really exciting ones. All right, so I'll give you one on eSource that everybody can use. That is, we have it in our new eSource, which we're rolling out, but should be widespread pretty much now, or pretty soon everyone will have access to it. It's basically what we call cross-form logic. So you save a data point and you can reference that data point in future visits. So like BMI, you collect height once, right? In future visits, you can just pull that height in, then you're just collecting the weight, and then the BMI auto calculates. So any type of study protocol where they might look for a delta between the old blood pressure and the new one, or whatever the difference is, and you have to do some calculation, that can all now be automated soon. So
nice.
Cross-form logic is what we call it. That's coming out soon. And then one that will require the collaboration of the sponsor, because we can't do it without them telling their vendor to do it, is we have a central lab workflow where a central lab can send the lab data to CRIO. We take the digital data and we surface all out-of-range values to the PI. PI can click a button and see the longitudinal values and then mark CS or NCS. And the PI can't sign until he or she has signed off on every single item. So that digitizes the central lab workflow, the review workflow. We're going live with that on a study. Like, we're just waiting for the study to start, but it's already been built and validated. Now, again, we got to have a central lab that works with us, and the sponsors tell the central lab, just like they have to tell the EDC company to work with us. So what we're really trying to do by introducing ourselves to sponsors and offering this more centralized approach for the ones that see the value in it is, look, we'll integrate with the other vendors. I mean, like, isn't one of the top 3 issues too many logins for the site, right?
100%.
Yeah, and we can solve that for them, right? We can solve that. It takes some time. You got to give us introductions. You got to force your vendors, because nobody in this industry has an open API like QuickBooks. Like, nobody does that. The fact that we're integrating already makes us different. Most vendors are very much like not built here philosophy, and we're the opposite. We want to integrate, and we want to pull data in, and we want to empower the sites that way.
Yeah, I was just speaking with a rep from LabCorp yesterday, and they were saying pretty much the same thing, Raymond. You may want to have conversations with them directly.
And we might be.
Sounds like a plan. Well,
Brad, were you gonna? I'm sorry.
I was going to say, Brad, do you want to have a question?
No, I think you pretty much hit it. I was going to say, I mean, you guys are essentially, end to end for sites, in terms of CTMS. You can pay your patients, you're sending out scheduling reminders, there's recruitment, there's finances, you got everything. And I was just going to ask, anything else on the roadmap, but I feel like you kind of hit on that already.
Yeah, and I think, again, with our one thing that we did recently was a partners program. So if you work with like central recruiters that have patient leads, right, it's a real pain to go into their portal and get the patients. But with those partners who we make available our API, and once they prove they can build to it, we make them available on our help center. So there's like, if you go to their help center, there's a whole bunch of different parts, different categories. And I don't remember how many recruiters we have, but like 7, 8, 9, whatever, that are selling directly to sites. And so you have the ad budget from the sponsor and you want to deploy it. Well, just go into the help center, find one, and just click a button, and then you can enable the API. Now all the leads come directly into CRIO. So there's no duplication data, you get it right away. And we allow them to figure out how those patients perform. So they get to find out, not for the other patients, but for the ones they source, did they screen fail, did they randomize, et cetera, because that's feedback that's valuable to them. So we've gotten a lot of interest from partners. And now we've got an ecosystem of central recruiters on our platform. But that's the kind of thing that we want to do more of.
I think
Well,
that's huge
that's
for sites. If you're trying to get any kind of metrics to what's going on, you might be receiving referrals from a number of community partners. You might be running your own advertising, and then you've got central recruitment campaigns. So, but to be able to see it all dump into one place, you can actually get some actionable insight into what's going on. Otherwise, you're just oftentimes kind of chasing your tail. So again, I love that.
yeah,
So-
there is no waste of data there.
Right.
Everything
And hopefully
is
coordinators don't have to
utilized.
go into another system to say what I did with your 35 leads. I mean, that's just a huge time suck.
So
Raymond, are you gonna be at the conference?
That's what I was just going to ask.
Absolutely.
We
You're a
can't
big
wait to
sponsor.
see you, hopefully.
Totally.
I missed your answer. You're going to be there?
Absolutely. Yes, I will be there. And I think we've got a whole big team from CRIO coming there. It's one of our biggest conferences is SOS. Very impressed with it last year when we went.
Yeah, it was great. Last year was good. Hopefully this year's even better. Brad picked out a fabulous location.
Just
Yes.
for you guys.
just for CRIO.
Honestly, my first time to Oklahoma. So
Mine too.
Oh, for many of us, for me
Us
too,
too.
and for Julia, Chris.
It's not as bad as it sounds, guys. So I'll show you some cool
No, it
stuff.
actually for me
No,
sounds
actually, it looks-
exciting.
yeah.
After I because I didn't know much about it, and then I start searching, and I just like, wow, it sounds very exciting.
So we like to keep these things short, Raymond, so they don't drag. Do you have any closing thoughts you would like to add?
Nope, just hope to see everyone at SOS, swing by our booth. And thank you very much for inviting me on.
No, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Lots of great information.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you
thank
so
you.
much for your support since the very first one, Raymond. That's greatly appreciated. And obviously now more than ever, I'm very excited about everything CRIO is creating. And like I say, it was a pleasant surprise to learn that you were a site owner, which I'm sure many people is gonna love to hear that.
So I have one more thought to add since Dan's not here. Everybody, you got to get your room at the Omni Hotel. Space is limited, so you don't want to be stuck without a room and sleeping in. I don't know. Brad would show you a good overpass to sleep under. So get your room.
Yeah.
Omni
Just
Hotel.
remind everybody, March 13th through the 15th, Oklahoma City, saveoursites.com. And if any interested sponsors, please reach out to admin@saveoursites.com.
Oh, and you do get a discount if you book by February. What is the date? February
26th?
27th?
27? Yeah.
At the hotel if you're attending the conference.
Yeah.
So do so by then.
Yeah, and you're also gonna get the pleasure to meet Raymond
That's
in
right.
person.
Great guy.
All right.
Well,
All right.
Thank you very much.
everybody.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you,
so much.
Raymond.
Thank you, Raymond.
Everyone have a good weekend.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Bye-bye.